Well, hello, and welcome to Life Talks with Crystal Phoenix and the third installment of my Trauma Bond series. Today, we are going to be talking about what trauma bonds look like with first responders. And um, one of my best friends and mentors in the world, Jenlyn, is going to be sharing her experience as a first responder and what she went through. And our beautiful sister, Sharon, will also be joining us just to keep us company because we love seeing her beautiful face and hearing her amazing input as well. So, I just want to give you guys a real quick update on what's going on with me. I did start an amazing new job at Menards. I get to work with flowers and everything, which is why you don't see me live as much. But I'm still here, still working, still thinking about everybody. The series is going to be done. Um, and I am looking forward to sharing all of our wisdom with you guys. Lauren, thank you so much for being here. To all of our friends on LinkedIn and YouTube that are joining us now and on Team Replay, this is a really, really important topic. Everybody just thinks that trauma bonds is, just, with abusive romantic relationships. And you don't really think about all the different forms. And that's why I'm doing this series. Um, so, without further ado, I am going to bring up the beautiful Jenlyn and Sharon because I just want to say hi and she doesn't have to hide behind, backstage because she is one of our best friends. And we are going to get started on this amazing but very difficult topic. Hello, ladies. Welcome and thank you for joining me today. So,
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. And like you said, this is very powerful, and what you're doing is so very powerful. So thank you so much for being you and digging into the hard topics that are hard to talk about, but so very important. So thank you for that. And hello, good morning, Sharon.
well, what started this whole series was in less than 7 days, I had 10 different people send me a DM asking me about trauma bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And having, you know, dealt with trauma bonds in my own personal life, um, it is a very real thing. And people don't understand them because it is a newer thing that's
Mm-hmm.
acknowledged in the mental health arena. So that's what spurred it on. And of course, me and Sharon got to talking like we do, and we put together a list. And I actually have another one to add on that, by the way. Mentor, like teacher kind of trauma bonds, especially like in the private
Yeah.
schools. I think I'm gonna talk to Ollie about that one. But you know me and my
Mm-hmm.
ADHD brain. So Sharon, why don't you say hi real quick, and then I'm going to hand the
Oh,
mic over
she's kind of letting me up.
To Jen Lynn after you say hi real quick.
Hello. Sorry, I've been trying to battle my four-legged friend here. I must have gotten on live because now she wants my attention. But
Of
anyway,
course, but we love Minnie. It's okay.
hello everybody. How are you, Crystal, Jen Lynn? Great to see you, Crystal. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I just really quickly want to echo what Jen Lynn said. That I appreciate that you are one of the people that will continue to have discussions around the hard topics. You're not afraid of what people may say or think of you for doing it. Trauma bonds are a real thing. Um, I know you and I talked extensively about this before you decided to do the series. I know we'll be doing one. Um, on, I mean, all of us probably will be doing one on, caregiver trauma bonding with the person that they're caring for. And that can also
Mm.
mean family members who are caring for the individual. It doesn't only have to mean people that are hired. So I know that's a whole different topic, but I just wanted to reinforce that trauma bonds are a real thing, and trauma bonds can happen really easily and insidiously. You don't have to, most people don't know that it's happening because it's just part
Right.
of the dynamic of what you do. So thank you. And I'm going to my
Absolutely. And don't forget, Sharon is going to be the one putting me in the hot seat when I share my personal trauma bond from my abusive relationship, because it does work better when somebody else is guiding the conversation when you're talking about yourself, or at least is there to support you, because these are hard topics, you know.
Yeah.
So without further ado, Jenlyn, um, I know you have put a lot of thought into this ever since I brought this up to you. Because we've talked about what happened with you and
Mhm.
your partner and everything. You've written about it in multiple books, including my anthology. Um, so why don't we just dive in?
Yeah.
You first responders first. Why don't we let the audience know exactly what defines a first responder, and
Mhm.
let's go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say, I also want to start with this, that some of what I'm going to share today is really raw. And some of you, especially if you are a first responder or from the first responder world, may not feel so comfortable with what it is that I'm sharing. But I'm offering this conversation as a mirror, not a spotlight, even though it may feel like you're in one. My intention is healing. There is no blame to be had. This is simply, this is the dynamics of what happens in the field of first responders. So, first responder, the definition of that, and then I want to talk about the difference between a first responder's trauma bond and a regular trauma bond. I think that's a really great place to start. So, a first responder is a anyone that volunteers with a volunteer fire department. It is anyone that volunteers with like the Red Cross. It is paramedics, it's EMTs, it's firefighters, it's police, it's the FBI, it's it's the excuse me, it's the different parts, it's the SWAT team, right? It's all of that are considered to be first responders. And so it's a very wide um, net of professions and people that respond to things in emergency situations and in dangerous situations, and with fire, right? So fire departments also all fall into that first responder net.
It,
These bonds feel like family, right?
yeah,
Like, go ahead.
I was going to say it's basically the ones that are first on the scene. When you call
Yeah.
911, it's
Mm-hmm.
who is first on the scene. And a lot of times it is the volunteers. It's not
Yeah.
always the police, it's the volunteer EMTs and firefighters. Matt's mom
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
was one down in Texas when they were little, even, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Um,
you guys see the ugly before anybody, and I hate to put it that way, but
mhm.
it's true. You know.
Well, it is. I mean, you see unimaginable things.
Mhm.
You see an experience. It's a very much the same as being a soldier. Um, and also it's very different, right? There's but there is life and danger. There are guns and stuff involved sometimes, and your life is on the line many times. um So that makes a huge difference in how these bonds are created. And it feels your family. You are family. Your life depends on one another, not just your partner who you're working with, but inner department wise, right? So, police, fire department, EMS, right? And and the volunteer fire departments, they all have to have relationship, and you are dependent and codependent on one another for your survival independently and collectively. So they absolutely operate on codependency, avoidance, hyper loyalty, and that blurs the line between connection and captivity, really, every single day. It differs from other bonds because a general quote unquote trauma bond often forms in abusive relationships. They are tied to cycles of abuse and apology. They're maintained by a power imbalance. They're often familial or romantic. And they are often emotional, uh, and personal, and shame is something that's individual. For first responders, the trauma bonds are formed in professional and peer based environments. They are tied to cycles of trauma and suppression. They are maintained by peer loyalty and the duty and the unspoken norms that you have, right? Because you will not out your partner. You're not going to tell on them. You're not going to say anything about what it is that they're doing. Leaving, it feels like betraying the team. It feels like you're breaking a code. The shame is cultural and collective, right?
Thank you so
So
much. I was hoping you were going to go there. I was so hoping that was. This is why we work so well together. Because yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So it is like it's breaking a code. And so that's something that also is very common. It is a hive mind set, because there's unique dangers in those trauma bonds. Right. So you're rewarded for staying silent. You're rewarded for being tough. You're rewarded for toxic behaviors get normalized. So substance abuse, infidelities, aggression, anger, all of these unhealthy bonds can also outlast the job itself, and they spill over into every area of your life, and you feel more loyal to the trauma and to your partners and to the collective than you do to your own healing. And this matters because trauma bonds are formed and we mistake it for trust. And also you need to keep the lid on. It feels like you need to keep the lid on so that you can guarantee the safety, because trauma bonds keep you stuck. They keep you stuck. But we feel like you can feel like you owe your life, right? Because this is the other part. This is the other part of being a first responder. They are going to save your life. You're going to have your life saved by your partner, by a team member, by another department member. That is just going to happen. So then there's this, we've been through hell and back together. There's this, I will always have your back no matter what. There is, I wouldn't be here without you. And those bonds end up being also very deeply protective. It took me 13 years post what happened in my life to begin speaking about it. And if and when every time I talk about my story, it circles around and someone from that arena of my life sees and hears, I still get attacked because I am breaking the code. I'm breaking the code of sharing what it is that's happening behind closed doors, and it's still frowned upon. It's something that's still also, you're blind to it, right? We also become blind to what's happening because we're just living our lives. We're just going to work every day, and our work happens to be this extremely highly stressful area and job, and it is dealing with life and death constantly, and we're just trying to keep doing that. And it's something that you love. You don't do it for the money, that is for damn sure. When I started as a paramedic, I was making $7.50 an hour. You work 24 hours, 24 to 96 hours, 120 hours. I've worked that many hours straight with no sleep because there were so many calls happening, right? And so all of this is like this perfect storm for very, very, very deep rooted trauma bonds, even if you had a completely healthy life beforehand, before you get into the profession. And if you didn't, if you already have trauma in your life from before as a child or anything like that, then that just compounds what it is that is happening on a daily day, day to day, on a day-to-day unfolding. And so I want to also just give you all an opportunity to ask questions or say or add something in. So I'm gonna open that door
I
for a
was
second.
gonna actually joke and be like, "Oh, you got paid?" Matt's mom didn't get paid. The guy I dated in upstate New York didn't get paid. They were
No, as a
straight
volunteer, you
volunteers.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Real
So when I
quick,
volunteered, because I also did that as well,
yeah.
I didn't get paid when I volunteered, but I
Mhm.
did get paid when I was doing it as a job, as a profession.
Yeah. Really
Um,
quick, I just
so
want to say hi to
yeah,
Kinga, Ollie, and our beautiful Queen Kaylin. They are all in
yeah,
here listening, and um,
yes.
uh,
Welcome in,
Miriam,
Miriam.
thank you for coming. And everything that you said is so true. I have seen that in my life, just coaching, um, you know, but I've seen that in other facets, in my professional life. But it's so true. I mean, when you watch like Law and Order, everything that you described to me screams Law and Order, SVU, Stabler, and Olivia
Yeah,
to a point, all
yeah.
those crime shows and stuff that, are important. We were just talking about, the fact that one of my stories that I'm writing, Sharon inspired me to do it in a fiction sense. And I thought Law and Order SVU, you know, kind of like how the opening talks about, like you told me, Sharon, how the stories seem, these are based off of true events,
Right.
but changed to protect and things like that, you know. So you are rewarded for staying quiet, and that, like, I listen to like the Reddit stories all the time,
Mhm.
on YouTube. Like when I'm driving to work, it's kind of like my podcast, and so many stories describe exactly what you just said. You are, you know, rewarded for keeping your mouth shut, being quiet, having their back. But heaven forbid you disagree or stand up for yourself. All of a sudden, you're the betrayer after everything we've done for you, or they'll try and bring you down with them
Mhm.
if you whistle blow, you know,
Yeah.
and that's not cool. And you
Yeah.
have certain fear almost,
Mhm.
And you're supposed to trust this person with your life, especially as a first responder, that they have
Right.
their back. You really shouldn't have fear when it comes to that. And
Right.
hi, Brian. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to pass the mic to Sharon or back to you if Sharon, you wanted to, if you had any
I just wanted to say really quickly that I think that as a first responder or anybody in the human services field where you're working with other people, it is a common thread that you are supposed to stay quiet and protect the team. I have never been a first responder. I have family and friends that have been, you know, first responders, and I know how difficult it was, and you do bring it home. But as somebody who has worked with all different types of populations of people from all different backgrounds, having all different trouble points or struggles, right? We were taught, quietly, we were taught, to be quiet and to not say anything. And when you feel like you have to break the code, as you were saying, Jenlyn, when you feel like you have to leave or when you feel like you have to stand up for what's right, because it becomes a tug of war in your heart. It really does, because most people that are in the human services field or first responders, there's a piece of their heart that is making them do it because, like Jen Lynn said, it's not for the money. So it's coming from your spirit. So you do have that tug of war between loyalty to your team and not perpetuating something that you know is just not right. And when you finally reach the limit of having to say something because you just can't put your head down at night, you become ostracized, and you become, it takes a while. If you're still with that team, it takes a while for you to infiltrate back into that team, but you never infiltrate back completely. There's always that little bit of distrust of you. So you have to be really strong within yourself and within your self-worth and within your ability to trust your instincts and make decisions that feel good for you as well as for the team. But sometimes what feels right for you is not going to go along with what the team has to say. And I think that's a real issue that a lot of people and first responders deal with, because you do have to have, people have to have your back. And if you betray them, they'll have your back, but not in the same way. So it becomes a real issue.
Yeah, it does, because there's the ostracization, right? And there's no kind of tribe like a tribe where you're actually living together. And departments vary in size. So it could be, you could be in a department where you're off by yourself and it's just you and your partner. It could be where you're in and there's 30, 40, 50 of you, but you are, you're in the barracks together, you're sleeping together. I want to talk about to some of the immediate effects of what is happening inside the body. We know post this that this is everything that's happening, but when you're in it, you don't know, you don't recognize these things. And even if you've heard, okay, this is what trauma does to your body and this is how you're supposed to overcome it, it's difficult to do. And you also have to keep in mind that when I entered into this profession, when my wife entered into this profession, we were 18 years old. We were children. Our bodies and our brains were not even through developing to begin with. And that is typically the story, right? So you also have a compounded issue of long term, short term, and long term effects in your body. So I want to talk about first, and there's a couple of other things here that you are molded. Confidence is something that we all need. But I know that you guys have heard me say before, I promise you that if you ever have to be treated by a neurosurgeon, you want the one that thinks he's a god. And that is true. And that is also true of a paramedic. It's also true because paramedics do things in the field. Paramedics do things that doctors do not do. that nurses do not and cannot do, right? And that's just because it's their specialty and it's emergent. And inside a hospital setting, everyone has their own specific specialty. But outside of, you're doing everything, short of doing surgery or amputations, things like that we don't do. But you're doing crikes, which is also called a tracheotomy, right? You're cutting into airways. You're doing all kinds of things. You're hanging around upside down with people. You manage to do things that are outside of causality. Your body shouldn't be able to contort. You shouldn't be able to tube somebody when you're upside down. So also when you do things like that, your confidence just is this thing. It's a thing to be known as a paragod. It's a label that you get. It's you're at the top of the ladder rung, if you will. People look up to you. Everyone wants to train with you. And so there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of all of that goes into. So as we know, when we fall hard. So when you don't save somebody suddenly, then you take that to an inner depth that it affects your sense of worth on a level that's really hard for most people to understand. So you work with people that, you don't like in a job, and then you did it, right? So I love what you just said, Brian, because it's so true. And I say this all the time, you brain how you train. And that's exactly it. So even with the fact that you may have these inner, strings of things going along, which I'll talk about that a little bit later. That definitely happened with my wife and I, because we were together all the time at work, and then we were together all the time at home for 13 years, right? So when it came down to it, though, all of that went to the wayside, and you do what you need to do to save yourself, to save who it is that you're there to serve, and your partner and the rest of your team, right? So it's back at the station. It's afterwards that those things start coming through, and you do absolutely learn to be able to step away, right? Turn those feelings off. They don't matter. It doesn't matter how much you and this is the strength of that bond. It doesn't matter how much you may just like, oh my God, I can't stand this person. I hate this person, even when, but when something's going down, when you need to you step automatically into that. You're still going to save that person and all of those things. But we know on a deep level that it does absolutely affect things. So I want to talk about, in the first matter of seconds, even just knowing that you have a call is something that sets off a barrage of things inside your body. It's a tone. It's like ding, right? It goes off. It does it during the day. It does it at night, especially at night. There are time limits around things. So if it's in the middle of the night and you're sleeping and the tone goes off, you have to be up. You have to be fully dressed. You have to be in the box or the ambulance or the fire truck, whatever it may be. You have to be answering, and you have to be moving in less than 3 to 5 minutes for most departments. Okay. So that is nothing. It's a blink of an eye. So if you are sleeping, if you've managed to go to sleep and you are getting sleep, you're sleeping really freaking hard, especially after a long time, because your body just crashes. You crash, then you rise. You crash, you rise. You crash, you rise, right? So when that happens, the adrenaline goes off, your heart rate, your blood pressure spike, your pupils dilate, your airways open so that you can have more oxygen. Your blood rushes to your muscles and away from your digestion, away from your skin. You're hyper alert. It can cause you to be shaky, and it can cause you to be nauseous as you're driving, right? And you're trying to respond. You're doing deep breaths on the way, trying to kind of get that response to kind of slow down just a little, but not a lot, because you need that to be happening.
Then you need the adrenaline, not the shake, basically.
Yes. Yes, and then the cortisol, right, follows, and it sustains that alert state. It increases your blood sugar for energy. It enhances your brain's use of that glucose, and it suppresses those non-essential functions like immunity, digestion, reproduction, right? So it suppresses all of those things. You want to know why I have 7 autoimmune diseases? This is why. This is why. After 15 years of this, that is exactly why. Because minutes to days, these are the side effects of that one response, um, you can feel exhausted, emotionally flat, anxious, foggy, your digestion and your sleep are disrupted. You experience muscle soreness, headaches, digestive upset. Your cortisol remains elevated for hours and even days. If the stress was super intense, your immune system is suppressed, making you vulnerable to illness. Okay. The long-term effects of this can happen days to weeks from the one thing, at just one thing, right? So the minute that you respond from your first call, the minute that response happens to your very first call, you are going through this nonstop the whole entire length of your career, and it wreaks absolute havoc on your physical body, your emotional body, your spiritual body. Just it wreaks havoc on you. Memory and focus decline, you have mood disorders begin to develop, you have anxiety, you get depression, you can have hormonal balances, and for libido drop, for women, menstrual irregularity, chronic and constant inflammation, gut issues begin to set in, you have adrenal fatigue that can start setting in, you have hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, there's all of these things that happen, and when they start happening and when they start going on and on and on and on, like I said, a lot of times you can end up like me with 7 autoimmune diseases, and that actually cost me my career. And so there are some things that you can do to help yourself, right? I've learned so much so much more about what we could and what I could have done during, but at the time we didn't know that. We didn't know all of the things that we do now about vagal nerve activation, how to actually utilize and cause restorative sleep habits. We didn't know that protein rich and magnesium rich meals would help. We didn't know that we knew, but we didn't know the depth of being able to go out into nature and go into slowness and stillness. And we certainly didn't know about to the depth that we do today about somatic practices to process trauma. We didn't know those things. And so
I didn't know about the magnesium part personally.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So good to know on
Yep.
that one.
If you've been through if you've been through trauma, which I mean, really is everybody, magnesium is a supplement that you absolutely should be taking. And I want to also say that I am not a doctor, and you should check with your doctor before you do or start anything like that. But it is something that's, very, very well known now. And that's just part. Your chronic flight and fight loops means that your sympathetic system and your nervous system stay overactive. They rarely let the actual rest and digest take place again. You become numb, you become raw at the same time, right? So you don't feel things, and yet you feel everything. You don't feel anything, you don't care about anything, but yet everything triggers you, makes you upset. It can, right? And then you become very, very dysregulated. The brain actually changes structures. Okay. So your hippocampus, which is responsible for memory, it begins to shrink. And that looks like forgetfulness and confusion. Your amygdala, which is your fear center, it enlarges and it becomes hyper vigilant. It becomes exaggerated, which looks like paranoia. Your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your decision making, it weakens. So impulsivity, poor judgment, irritability are things that become a normal for you. You have an increased risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, and stroke. Inflammation causes everything from your joints to your gut, right? I lost 80% of my stomach several years ago because it literally ate itself. It was just one big, huge hole. And so it had, that part had to be removed. You have higher chances of things like type 2 diabetes due to that constant cortisol and blood sugar elevation, the weakened immune system, sleep disturbances. Then there's the psychological and emotional. There's post-traumatic and complex post-traumatic stress syndrome. There's the anxiety, depression, panic attacks. There are um, recalls, right? Flashes of things that have happened. You have this, again, this lack of joy, lack of connection. You experience this emotional numbness. You struggle with intimacy, with family life, because you're tired all the time. And everybody, you want to be able to be apart with your family, but then you're so tired that you don't want anybody to bother you when you're off on the days that you're off, right? You have disassociation, burnout. I don't even know who I am without my uniform. My uniform is who I am. You have disassociative episodes where you shut down, right? And you shut down emotionally. And this is so hard to address in first responders in particular, because there is that absolute culture of stoicism and silence. It is the pressure to suck it up, stay tough, like I said before. There's lack of trauma-informed leadership and or HR support. There's none. There's almost zero, none. There's few safe outlets for emotional processing, and there's a misuse of adrenaline highs, right? And then that identification with the purpose of you are your uniform, and if you're not saving somebody, you are nobody. And if you begin to fail, or when you fail at saving a life, especially if it's a young life or a baby, or something like that, right? It hits different. It hits in a completely, different way. So there's multi-layered.
Oh, yeah. Like I was telling you before we went live, when I was talking to my friend, her son is a first responder here in Unionville, and he's, oh, I don't need mental health, I don't, and she's looking at him like, yeah, you do. It's like, I know I have PTSD from the fire at my dad's. It's like, the things that you see and go through, it's like, yeah, honey, you do. So ironically, she said to make sure to send her the link when we're done, because she's going to make him watch this.
Yeah, like it's not, yes, it is not a question. If you are a first responder, and even if you're doing all the right things, even if you're eating the right diet, even
It
if
doesn't
you're doing
matter.
somatic practices and all of these things, it does not matter, because you cannot 100% stop the process that is happening, and the sense that it's long term. And this is just work related. This isn't even addressing all the regular, normal, everyday life things that also cause all of these issues. So it's not if, you are. And the moment that we can be brave enough and be courageous enough to know that that is a fact, the more empowered we are to begin to understand how to navigate that in our
One
life.
of the problems with it, though, is that when you're a first responder, it's the stoicism, like you said, but it's also the, you know, like you said, suck it up, be tough. So, and in our society, still, not just for first responders, but for almost anybody, there's such a stigma with, you know, needing mental health support. And the truth is, I don't care who you are or what you do. everybody, if you're a human breathing being,
Mhm.
everybody can benefit from mental health support,
Absolutely.
because mental health support teaches you how to regulate your emotions, teaches you how to react versus respond, and so many other things. And even if you see yourself as healthy and not needing, trust me when I tell you, you can walk into a room and be healthy and still get a benefit from
Yeah.
it if you have an open mind. But when you're in a first responder position or any type of position like that, you need somebody to offload to that's not your wife,
Yeah.
not your husband, not your partner, not your this, not your that, because you do take work home,
Yeah. I don't
especially.
care what anybody says. You take your
You
work
can't
home,
separate the two.
whether
You
it's
yes.
first responders or, and you're
You
gonna laugh. I hear the Menards jingle in my head half of the night. Even something that small. You know, when you hear, like, I know you probably heard the sirens hours after you were off shift at times.
Well, I can tell you that my brother was a volunteer firefighter for about a year or two. And first of all, I just want to say something for the families out there who are living with first responders. When their radio goes off and you hear that siren and you hear the call coming through of what the call is, like major auto accident or, whatever, it affects you as well. And it interrupts your sleep pattern and your,
Mhm.
internal clock. And it starts to affect your mental health as well, not just because you're dealing with the person who is the first responder and all the trauma that they go through seeing what they see, but the minute my brother's uh, radio went off, or whatever they used to call it, I would hear it. I'd hear him jump up. He started sleeping in pants so that all he
Mhm.
had to do was throw a shirt on and be out the door. And then I couldn't sleep because I knew when he got home, I would have to, I took on the role of being the one who kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I let him offload to me.
Yeah, deep fried.
Mhm.
Yeah, decompress. That was the
Yeah.
word I was looking for. Yeah.
Oh,
So that's what I want.
decompress or debrief.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you guys have to have that. Now, Jenlyn, when it came to you, it was harder because your partner was also your partner.
Yes. Yeah.
So you really had no separation,
No. Mhm.
and if I remember correctly from your chapter, that's actually how you met, was in the
Yes.
training. And I
Yeah.
wanted to actually bring that up. Um, you have to fight so much harder as a woman to be a first responder.
Mhm.
Um, one of Matt and Jen's best friends um, is an EMT, and Missouri actually paid for her to get her,
Mhm.
certifications and everything, but she had to sign a contract to stay with
Right.
them for a certain amount of time, and
Yes.
da da da. But it's a lot of work,
Yeah. Mhm.
and you have to fight twice as hard to get that respect. So there's a trauma bond forming right there, just
Mhm.
because of how hard you have to work twice as hard to prove that you are just as amazing as the boys, and
Yeah.
probably better because you're more in tune to different things.
Mhm.
And it actually, having male and female, winds up hopefully being a well balanced wheel, because you see different sides of
Yeah.
things in a perfect world
Yeah.
where ego doesn't affect. But
Yeah.
you earn that ego as a female first responder. You earn that ego, you earn that right to have it,
You'll hear me. Yeah.
because of everything that you go
Yeah.
through. And you know how much respect I have for you and how much love. And I mean, you've helped me in so many different ways, emotionally and just with my growth period, and I know a lot of that was learned through your trainings and what you've gone through, you know. So just hearing about it, it's like all these things, like, me and my puzzle analogy, it's like
Mhm.
you're just putting more puzzle pieces together as to getting to know more insight into you, and I truly do appreciate that, and you know how much I love you. So I'm gonna shut up because I want you to go deeper into this.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you'll hear me say things like, I um unhumbly, right? Unhumble. Like I don't part of that is for my training, and part of that is because I know my worth. And I just don't agree with the whole concept of humility. Because the only system that wants you to think that you need to be humble is a system that wants you to be beneath the pressure of it. And so that's a conversation for another day. So then you have, all of this does and was a double impact because we were also life partners. So we did meet in paramedic school, and we became friends, quick friends. We became friends immediately. And then it was towards the end of our training that we became lovers. And then at the time, um, there was a lot. Every place that I worked, every process that I went through and that she did, we were the first women being allowed. We were the first women hired. We were the first ones to pass, because they had training set up so hard that most men didn't pass. And that is just a physical, and don't come at me, because this is just a fact. Men are physically stronger. That is just a fact. Their muscle mass is larger. They are larger, right? That is just a fact. I'm 5 foot. I'm very short, right? And so the stretcher, the gurney, the striker is taller than I am, right? Like it comes up to here on me. So being able to get into those kinds of positions where even lifting that up into the truck is a serious challenge. It's hard. It's very physical. And at the same time, you're also very, very strong, very strong. And I've taken down grown men that were that had 10 times the strength that they normally would, because they were on a certain kind of drugs that give you that kind of effect. And all that adrenaline helps and assists you to do that. So again, it's very ego based of, hell yes, I can do anything that you can do, and I can do it better. Watch me do it. And so there's all of that also is going into what it is that you're doing every single day. And every single day you're going in wanting to be faster, harder, stronger, better. You think that there's improvement culture inside of like corporate world or entrepreneurism even? Please, right? I love you all, and it doesn't mean that it's not its own world, but it is different. It's different. And so even though you're
Agree.
still pulling into all of the same exact things, because it's all it's all an extension of the human experience, there are things that are more, they have more repercussions, right? They have more ripples, deeper ripples. So everything in our relationship was great. right, in the beginning, but also at the same time, in the reflection now of in August, it'll be 14 years. I also realized that, you know, there was already, like, there was codependence, there was gaslighting. And let me be very clear that gaslighting wasn't even a word. Nobody knew what gaslighting was. And then when gaslighting got a label, I personally was like, oh shit, I know exactly what that is. I've been dealing with that like my whole life growing up. I've been dealing with it for the last 25 to 30 years in the medical profession as a patient, because you get gaslit about all of the things that it is that you are experiencing from the PTSD that turns into the complex PTSD that then turns into all the autoimmunes and all of the things, right? Like, you get gaslit with all of that. And I'm also going to say this. And these are some of the things that I said earlier that are very upsetting. They're my experience. They're my experience. Everyone is, in their effort to process and deal, they have anger issues, they disassociate, they have alcohol and or drug problems and or both, and the level of affairs that happen inside of EMS stations and inside of firehouses is extremely high. And by extremely high, I mean everyone. There is not a single person that I know, including myself, that did not fall into having an affair with a different coworker, but also with a coworker, because there are things that happen psychologically, physically, when you do save each other's lives, when you are around each other all the time, when no one understands what it is that you're going through except for the other people that are going through it with you. Okay? Period. That is period. Across different departments, across different sets of teams, and even post, because I'm still part of that world, right? My son's father was also a paramedic and still is. My son followed suit and was a paramedic, and he's not now, but he was for 8 years. Right. These things are 100% the truth. And this is what happens. It's the same as if you took a group of people, you put them out on an island, and then you had them, well, go through stressful situations. Life or death situations constantly is going to happen. Eventually, everybody's going to end up being intimate with one another, right? Like, it just happens. And it's
A lot of times they don't even have like segregated showering or anything. I mean, you guys are together all the time.
Yeah.
And you have that closeness. And when you go through something like that, like those kind of traumas, and it is very traumatic when you have to save someone's life or save your partner's life, things like that. You know, you do bond, and it is emotional. And you're absolutely right. I mean, and it's like that in so many different fields, within the first responders and the military.
Mhm.
And I was actually even thinking about like the airlines and everything, when because you're gone so much with the pilots and everything. And, you know, you form those bonds of what you've been through, and you can at times mistaken that gratitude for something more, or get caught up in the moment.
Right.
I'm and I'm not I know quite a few that, after a really hard shift, you guys will go out to the bar, have a few drinks together, you know, and you're still caught in that adrenaline high and that gratitude and appreciation and, camaraderie, and things happen,
Mhm.
and so it that kind of it can at times, make things a little troubled within the team.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I think as a
Mhm.
society, we really need to start paying attention to the patterns and not, being ostriches and putting our head in the sand. Because if we provided better supports, stronger supports,
Mhm.
then a lot of this, I'm not going to say all because, I'm not an all or nothing person, but a lot of this, people would see, you know, subside and be a healthier thing. And you could still develop relationships with the people that are saving your life and you're saving theirs, but you would be able to form a healthier relationship, not a toxic trauma bond relationship. But when you're dealing with things where the only people that understand truly what you're going through are the people that are going through it with you, how can you not, if you don't have a way to learn, to offload on somebody that's not involved in it, and also learn ways to process in a more healthy way, effective way? What are you supposed to do? You're going to do what you know by default. And what we know by default as human beings, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. What we know by default sometimes is not the healthiest thing to do.
Right.
And so we need to be able to really challenge ourselves to really address what's going on. And it's not going to be easy. So everybody needs to stop with this, but it's not easy. No, it's not, but it's a lot more simple than we give it credit for. And if we would do something about it, we would be our society as a whole would be so much healthier.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because when we take all that pressure off of, right, things change. It's one of the things that actually AI can help us with actually a lot and a ton, is taking all that pressure off of our brain. But that again is also another conversation for another day. I don't want to even go down that road, because me, and I will go on it because I love yes. So we talked about one of the chapters that I wrote, and I want to just what, because this is part of what happened, right? My wife did have an affair, a 12-year affair. And the whole 12 years, she denied it. The whole 12 years, we argued about it because there was no fucking denying it, but yet she would. Um, and so that had a lot to do with everything that kind of happened at the very end too. And so I want to talk about that. Also want to just say that when we're working with one another, and even when we're not, that adrenaline high becomes the norm that feels safe for you. So when you are at home and things are not at that elevated place, you pick fights, you sabotage the peaceful quiet making because it's boring. It actually feels unsafe to you because it's like your brain kind of turns upside down. It gets all twisted within itself. And so I just want to share a little bit that I wrote, because this is also per department, right? This is not just inside your EMS house and firehouse. This is also the doctors, the nurses, the hospital staff that you're always delivering patients to, right? Everybody knows everybody, and everybody stays quiet about the things that they know or suspect, the things that they've seen, right? You don't say a word.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah. So I start my chapter with this. No one said a word as I nearly ran down the glossy hall that I knew like the back of my hand. I had been bringing patients into Trauma Bay 1 for years. Besides, amongst cohorts, when an incident involved your own, there was a silent oath in place. Stick to the facts and only intervene when you absolutely had to, which is why they didn't mention that my wife wasn't alone. Her eyes were wide and frantic and able to fully meet my own gaze, and that was absolutely to meet my own gaze that was immediately filled with blinding tears of rage. The door thudded loudly behind me as I immediately walked away, leaving her with her lover to continue feeding her ice cubes. After all, activated charcoal does tend to dehydrate a person, and we didn't want that now, did we? No, we didn't want that at all. So I walked into the hospital room to find and see my wife being fed ice cubes by her lover that she's denied for 12 years is her lover, right? And she had overdosed, and it was not the first time that she had attempted. I also want to say this. We were doing all of the things that we knew to do, and we were under medical care. She was under medical care. We were going to counseling. We were doing all the things that we knew to do. And none of it ultimately mattered. And that's the ultimate tragedy. There are so many things that we can do to control our lives, the impact that we have, the impact that our lives that we live have on us. And there is so much that we simply cannot. So I also want to say this. If you, right, are a first responder, if you are a soldier, if you've served, if you treat, right, and any of these things are true for you, this is not personal, right? These things are not on you. And when you are in this kind of stress at all times, you're not even making quote unquote logical decisions. This is all subconscious. This is all what long-term effects of trauma are and what they do in mental health, even if it's being treated, even if you're doing everything right. And that's why I said earlier, it's not a question of am I, it's a question of being able to say, am I brave enough to say that I am experiencing these things? Because biologically, neuroscience says it, emotionally, psychology says it, right? We know that all of this stays and lives in your body. It's not a question of if. It is a question of can you be courageous enough to say that I am and that I am experiencing these things. Ultimately, what happened, and I guess that I should share a little bit about that too. We have is that after this at the hospital, my wife got released because there was not adequate space for her to be kept for a 72-hour hold, even though it was the law. Also because she was in, also because it's all family. She knew exactly what to say, to be told that and to be seen as, meh, she's not a threat for her to herself anymore. Yes, you tried to do this, but she's going to be fine. You all are doing the right things, right? So go follow up with your doctor. Go follow up with your doctor on Monday because this was a Friday, right? Despite me begging, please do not release her. But they did. And then she kidnapped me. It was about 72 hours before I escaped to my freedom. And then she took her own life. She attempted to take mine. The whole 72 hours, I was in a fight for my life. She had a psychosis, right? She experienced a psychosis. And so it changed obviously everything about my life. It changed everything about my life. I immediately became homeless. I immediately became a widow. I immediately became a survivor, right, of a horrible crime. I immediately lost my house, because if you think that I'm going to go back in and live in the house that I just spent the last 72 hours, fighting to survive in, and that my wife took her life in, no, we had animals that I immediately had to find homes for. And I mean immediately, right? So within 20 minutes of my escape, I get a phone call from my son's father, as I mentioned earlier, was a paramedic and a coworker. And this, by the way, though, our relationship was years before that. Years before. And I was a paramedic way before he was, and it was years before we'd had our son, years before. But at the time, he was working, and he was the one that was responded. And so he knew where I was, because my best friend lived about 3 blocks down the road. And so they didn't know where I was. That's why he called my friend, Cindy. And I was there. So as I knew, because within 10 minutes or so of me escaping, she took her life. She called 911 and had them on the line. When she did, she apologized to them, right? The letter that she wrote and left was mostly just an apology to them. And for having to be the ones to respond and find her deceased. So within 2 to 3 hours of that happening, the scenes, closed, it shifted. My son's not there. My son's at his grandparents, so I have to drive. I have to drive out. I'm mourning the whole time. All I want is my son. All I want is to be able to get to him. All I want is to be able to let him know. I don't want anybody else to tell him what's happened. I want to tell him what's happened. And for 13 years, not for 13 years, did he know the extent of what happened. He was 15 years old. He was 2 weeks away from starting his freshman year in high school. He knew her as his second mother from the time that he was 2 years old. He never knew in his life a time that she hadn't been in his life, right? Like all of those things. And amongst our brethren, some were able to accept, and mostly they weren't. And I was also accused, right? Even though the law knew what had happened, and the law knew that I didn't have anything to do with that part of her losing her life, some cannot handle and could not handle it. Some I know to this very day, if you were to ask them, would say that she didn't take her life, that I did, right? So then there's death, there's being widowed, there's being accused, there's all this stuff that unravels 13 years of all these different trauma bonds. And I also want to say that in my time of being a paramedic, 6 other people, 6 other coworkers, 6 other friends, 6 other brothers and sisters took their lives. And so you're also there for each other, the survivors, right? There's also this trauma bond that happens and seeps out into the families that are, the ripple effect is so much more than what we know. And there are no real systems in place to support you at all, and or the very ones that are very inadequate. And we didn't have insurance, or give me a break. And we didn't have insurance, not then. Like I said, I made $7.50 an hour. And we did not have insurance. And so everything that we, did do, it was out of pocket. It required saving money to be able to do that, For me personally, just even to be able to go through paramedic school, right? Like, I technically do not have but an 8th grade education. At 14 years old, I dropped out of school. I've been on my own, living as an adult on my own, taking care of my own roof over my head, taking care of my own food and all of those things since I was 14 years old. I walked back and forth with a 2-year-old in the rain, in the snow, in the sun, right? It didn't matter. I really did 5 miles back and forth from an apartment that I lived in when I divorced my son's father to a nursing home that I worked as an aide at night because they let me work nights. My son slept in on one of the couches in the foyer. And the only reason that I was able to have that job was because they allowed us to do that. So I did that, and I saved every single freaking penny and dime that I had, and I worked doubles and triple shifts to be able to put myself through paramedic school because it wasn't paid for. It didn't happen in colleges. It was an independent system at the time. You had to pay, every penny of it to begin with at first. And when I did that, though, I did become the first person in my family to break a generational trauma in of itself. That I was the first person in my family to have any kind of education post, even in high school education, which I didn't actually have. And some of my cousins at the time, shortly after, right, they got that high school education. They got that high school diploma. I got my GED when I was 16. The minute that I could get it, I went and I got it. And then, and so I know that I mentioned the autoimmunes, which I deal with now, and that all had, that all played in also what was happening then because I had already been sick. And I'd already, towards the end of that 13-year relationship, I had to stop being a paramedic, which was a whole nother layer of trauma. I had to leave what I loved. I had to leave what I'd put so much of my life into being able to obtain, right? The identity crisis that happens there, the amount of denial that my wife experienced, right? She didn't want to believe that I had these things going on with me. And it certainly didn't help that the medical field at the time did nothing but gaslight. Right. It's all in your head. And, shortly before, like 2 or 3 weeks before, in the middle of the night, one night, she was out on the front porch. I'd woke up and she wasn't in the bed, and I walked out and she was outside smoking. And I asked her, like, what's wrong? Right? What's going on with you right now? And she actually said, she turned around to me and she was bawling and she said, "You're going to die." And I said, "I am. One day." Right? I will die of the diseases that I have. They will kill me. They are killing me. That's just a fact. And that was something that she couldn't process, right? And who can blame her? Because that's a hard truth, right? And reality.
Really, really quick. Not all of the LinkedIn comments are popping up, and I just wanted to read one of Mary. I don't want to try it. It's Aldnovak, I think it is. She just wanted to say, "You were always strong, even at 5 feet. Never underestimate yourself." That is one of the comments that she posted, and I felt that this was a good moment to bring it up
Yeah.
because everything you're saying is so true, and it's true in just about anything. I mean,
Anything.
you know, when I quit culinary school because of, them putting my ex in a halfway house less than a mile, and he stalked me and he
Mhm.
did everything that he did, you know, giving up that dream, which was a tie to my dad and everything, was very hard on me,
Yeah.
and part of it was because of the romantic trauma bond that I had with him, that
Mm.
all of that affected me the way it did. Now, granted, he did some other things during that time that we'll discuss when Sharon has me in the hot seat for my relationship trauma bond. Um, because frankly, Sharon knows me just as well as you do, Jen, and you guys both know how to like get me to talk where I'm not like, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
or shutting down.
Yes.
But you know, everything that you went through, and then yeah, the the victim blaming, not allowing you to grieve and everything.
Mhm.
It's they don't want to see it, you know.
Mhm.
Um, Ironically, I know South Florida is actually implementing a lot of stuff like this now. Um, you know how I know? My EMDR therapist, we had just started getting started when she got offered a job in South Florida as a on site, because they have campus in that area for the EMTs and all the first responders, a really good job doing the mental health PTSD
Mhm.
therapy for the first responders in South Florida.
Mhm.
And this was for 3.5 years ago that she moved down there. And it's like, why do I always have to lose my EMDR therapist because they find better jobs? It's like, what? They meet me and all of a sudden things go in a positive direction. I'm happy for them, but
Right.
both of my EMDR therapists, that happened to me. They,
Yeah.
they both, it's like we just get the ball rolling and then
Yeah.
they, you know, but
Which is traumatizing. It's traumatizing every
it
time that
is.
you open up, right, to go through that,
Yeah.
and, because it is a process to open up, and, I have always lived my life as an open book. I've always talked about my traumas. I've always talked about whatever, how they've affected my life, and I one thing that most people don't understand is and I appreciate, like, when we encourage one another, and I love to be encouraged, because who doesn't love to be encouraged? But confidence, or knowing my worth and my value and all of those things, are nothing that I ever question or struggle with. And I'm not going to credit the trauma, because that's a bunch of bullshit. Okay. We say that the trauma got us to where we are, and it's okay because we're who we are, and we have strength, and we have resilience, and we have all of these different things because of the trauma that we've been through. And I understand saying that, because it is part of the process, but you can move past that. The trauma that you experienced and your survival of it did not make you who you are today.
Can I add something to that, Jenlyn?
Mhm.
So here's an extended perspective on that, and that is that when people tell me that my experiences made me who I am today, I tell them, well, I could have learned the lessons in a different way.
Absolutely.
I didn't have to go through the extent of the traumas that I went. Look, we all have positive and negatives we're going to experience in life. None of us are saying that
No.
negatives won't happen. And negatives do help you learn lessons. But you can learn the same lessons that you're learning in a trauma experience in other experiences,
Yeah.
and that are less impactful and damaging in a negative way.
Yeah.
I do want to say also one more thing before, we have to go today. And I just want to make sure I do want to say that what I have learned through all of this and through through working through my own issues, and let me say that it's a lifelong process, people.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma stays with you. You learn how to manage your trauma so that your trauma doesn't manage you. Because different experiences in your life will have the ability, I'm not even saying can, they will have the ability to place you right back in your trauma as if you were reliving it right there.
Yeah.
So, unless you learn how to manage it, it will manage you. But I know this is going to sound a little hokey, and I'm told this all the time, but it is a true fact. The most important relationship you have in this world is the one you have with yourself, because every other relationship is an offshoot of the relationship that you have with yourself. And if you
Yeah.
don't believe that, that's okay. But I'm just throwing it out there and encouraging you to really take a look at that. And saying that you need help is not a weakness, it is a gift that you're giving yourself and you're giving everybody else around you. Because when you're going through it, whether you want to believe it or not, you are affecting everyone around you with the toxins and the venom and whatever is in your system.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very, very well said. What's funny is I realized I completely screwed up the whole order of all this. I had like this whole plan, and I was gonna do, and I still am with Mac. We're going to do a live where we talk about big T versus little T, and you made me think of it, Sharon, when you said, how our trauma, helps us or forms, what we go through, but sure, you're right. It's like we could go through something a little, milder. Hence the big T versus little T
Oh,
that
yeah.
Mac and I are going to do a live, explaining big T, little T, and the different like trauma bonds and things like that, and what it means.
Um,
It's so, and we will be doing a part two to this, guys, because we have gotten nowhere near covering
yeah. And I want
everything
to,
that we want to
yeah.
on this.
I do want to, because we're on the subject of resilience. I feel like there's this really important thing that, that I want to say about it. And since we're here, I want to, do that. Um, Resilience is like, it's an adaptation, right? It's shape shifts, it people pleases, it shifts under pressure, it metabolizes, it can transcend categorization. But the truth is that, um let me see, I want to find something because I just had kind of written this little thing about it. A really important question that we can ask ourselves is, about about especially resilience, because we hear all the time, right? Especially now in today's world, that resilience is something that is coveted, it's applauded, it is talked about all the time, in the sense of, I have this resilience because of what I went through. And I want to say about that part, it's not the trauma, it's the repetition. We learn through repetition. It's not the trauma, it's the repetition. Okay. And, but I did just do this thing about resilience the other day, and I'm trying to hurry here because I know we only have a couple minutes, but I want to look at it. Where's it at?
Sis, we're on your schedule, not mine. I'm
And you guys
off today. You are welcome to talk all you want, but I know you have a doctor's
I
appointment.
do.
Um,
Um, so I'm trying to push it. I'm pushing it. I know my wife's like, come on.
while
We'll be out there.
While you're looking for that,
Yes.
we could actually do this either Wednesday or Thursday, same bat time
Next week,
next week. Yeah, because I have my schedule.
probably. I need
Um,
to
double check, but yeah,
double check,
I'm
but I think
free
we can.
Wednesday or Thursday, 10 a.m. CST, and we could just do the part 2 next week.
Yeah,
That way
I'll
it's
check
still
my
fresh in everybody's mind.
I'll
So,
check my schedule
yeah.
for both those days, and then I'll let
Mhm.
you know for sure.
But
I think that I mostly
and I had one thing to say on the resilience thing that you're saying. You're right. We are creatures of repetition. I actually say that when I'm being trained and stuff. I'm a person of habit. I'm not a visual trainer. I'm a hands-on muscle memory. But I do want to say one thing about resilience. It's not even fully that. It's the strive to want something better.
right.
It's knowing in your heart, deep down, whether you consciously admit it to yourself or not, you deserve something better
Re-
than what you're going through. You deserve, and you know it.
Yeah.
And that is the resilience, that
Yeah.
strive, whether it's for you yourself or looking at your children, your littles, saying, oh no, this isn't going to work for me. Like,
Resilience is being able to get up
mm-hmm,
after you fall or after you
mm-hmm,
experience
mm-hmm,
something and being willing to keep going
yeah,
in the face of adversity or in the face of the fact that you know that you're going
yeah,
to hit an obstacle after you get up. Maybe not immediately, but obstacles are going to keep happening because that's just part of life. So resilience is not overcoming a
mm,
trauma necessarily. Resilience is your ability and your desire to
mm.
want to get up and do it.
Anyway,
And yeah, anyway, do it in spite
yeah,
of
mm-hmm,
what you've experienced, in spite
yeah,
of what you might experience on the negative side. It's
mm,
about not letting anything or anybody else determine your outcome. It's about
yeah,
taking back your power every time something happens to you
mm,
and saying, basically, F you, I'm
mm-hmm,
going to do this anyway.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's despite being in complete and utter pain, wanting to give up and still moving forward
I
no
have.
matter what.
Yeah. I have a different that to me is the old paradigm of resilience. And I'm gonna walk you through what the new definition, a new paradigm of resilience can look and sound like.
I'm liking that because you know me, I'm a rebel. Let's flip that script. Let's do
Let's
it.
flip it. So
Mm,
the old story of resilience was that that only, and it serves the systems that are seeking to control us, right? So they taught us that resilient meant silencing your needs, that it meant working harder in the face of harm or despite of. So when you use that word despite or in spite of, you are in an old paradigm of resilience. That's your clue. When you're listening to yourself or when you hear somebody else talking, that's a clue that that's the program that's running, right? Or that you're staying loyal to systems that were supposed to protect you but aren't, and that, or that you're believing that burnout is a badge of honor, and or because you're able to do it despite of or in spite of, that means that it solidifies your strength, that it makes you stronger, that it makes you wiser, that it makes you harder, that it makes you softer, right? We confuse endurance with worth, and it keeps us small. We overfunction and we stay obedient. That's old resilience, right? And that serves capitalism. It keeps us grinding even when we're breaking. It serves patriarchy, that we keep nurturing everyone but ourselves. It serves colonial religions where you call your exhaustion faith and your pain is divine favor, right? You got that thing and it happened because of divine favor, because God loves and serves you, because you're more worthy, because of your resilience. Bullshit. Okay. And toxic entrepreneurship where you buy another solution to fix you, to fix yourself, and there's nothing that's actually wrong, right? But we fall into these beliefs about resilience, and those are the effects that we experience. And this is what I say about resilience. You don't have to be hardened to be strong. You don't have to go through hard things to be strong. We are already strong. We are born strong. Doesn't what we go through has nothing to do with our worth. If we stop believing it has something to do with our worth because we create and co-create our own experiences, guess what happens? We don't go through things like that anymore. When we can accept change, when we can accept things in our lives, when we can take responsibility in all of those things, there's no need for resilience. And it's not resilience, it's something that's separate. But I'm not going to try to go off too far on that. Your worth is not proven through your pain. You get to survive. We get to survive and thrive loudly with color, with contradiction, with catharsis, because that is life. That's the human experience. Not all endurance is resilience. Most of it, 99.99999%, is fear wearing a spiritual mask. Okay. Real resilience doesn't serve power, it reclaims it. It's the audacity to rest. It's the refusal to disappear. It's the commitment to live your full spectrum, not just the palpable parts. So sharing your story is resilience. Resting and taking care of yourself is resilience. Not going to work anyway. Not denying your needs for resting and digesting because you have these commitments that you had, right? It's really not. That's not resilience. Resilience is the opposite.
I think
Yeah.
resilience is, I know what I said before, and I
Mhm.
kind of think it's a combination of what I said before and
Mhm.
what you're saying. And one of the ways that I express it for me is resilience is actually acceptance.
Mhm.
Resilience for me is doing something in spite of, in a sense, because I don't know what other word to use. So if you have a
Mhm.
different word, I'm open to it, either one of you. But resilience for me is acceptance of myself, regardless of
Mhm. Of
what
your
others
circumstances.
have put on, what other labels or expectations people have had of me. Because so much of my life was fighting against, pushing against
Mhm.
the boxes that people put me in. And trust me, at almost 56 years old, people still try to put me in boxes. And
Mhm.
so it is my evolution, my process, that as I learn to accept me more and more every day, even now, that's where the resilience comes from. And the resilience that I had growing up was I had so many people saying what I wouldn't do and what I couldn't do, that I wouldn't accept that. I internally, even at a young age, not knowing what I was doing, not knowing any of this really,
Mhm. Right.
I just put it in my soul.
Mhm.
You're gonna say I can't do something? Well, bullshit.
I have another word for you. It's not
Okay,
resilience, it's defiance.
okay, I like
It's
that.
defiance. It is defiance. When somebody tells you, see it,
Mhm,
and I know this, right? Because I have defiance disorder. At the
mhm,
end of the day, I have defiance disorder. I'm autistic, I have ADHD, and I have defiance disorder. If you tell me that I can't, I'm going to.
yep.
Right?
Okay. Right. So that's
Mhm.
defiance. And that's something that served me very well. That
Mhm,
served me in saying what you can't do, I can do, and I can do it better. And I'm going to show
yep.
you. And I
Yeah.
did. What that cost me was everything. What
Uh-huh.
that cost me was my ability to work. What that cost me was my ability to walk. What that cost me was
Yep.
my ability to write. So really at the end of the day, these things can have multiple definitions, they can have
Mhm.
multiple meanings. And what I'm inviting anyone to is just the simple possibility to open curiosity about what if. it's not resilience? What if it is defiance? What if it's not actually something that actually serves us in this description? What if this description, though, does? And we
Right.
can rewrite our stories, right? We can shift, we can change what it is that we're experiencing. And so that's
Absolutely.
why
Yeah.
I rewrite what I see to be toxic
Yeah.
definition,
That
right?
Mm.
Um,
To
I think
me,
that rewriting is a process that we do through living
yeah.
our lives.
Yeah.
We're not, some of us
absolutely.
are more aware of it than others, because we have a different level of awareness. And I don't mean that
Yeah.
Yeah,
condescendingly
no,
to
it's just
anybody,
moving.
but we rewrite our stories every day, every
Yep.
second of every day.
Yep.
We have the power to. We have the
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
We have the ability to. It's a matter of making the shift. Honestly, to me, resilience and defiance kind of at times go hand in hand.
Mhm.
It really brings to mind one of my absolute favorite quotes. They they said to her, "You can't survive this storm." She
Mhm.
whispered back,
Yeah,
"I am the storm."
right.
And to me, that is defiance.
Yep,
That
it is.
but it also represents resilience. I
Mhm.
know what I am.
There's
I know who I am. There's still room to grow, and you're not
See,
gonna
that's
bring me down.
different. That definition of knowing who you are and all of those things is a different that's a different definition than in spite of.
Yeah. It
yeah.
Right. And
that's
accepting like you know, acceptance is
the
such
first
a
step to
huge part of
healing.
healing because
Yes.
that does put the hour that it puts the responsibility back in our hands
Yeah.
until we can accept our part, until we can accept what it is that's happened, until
Yeah.
we can accept
Exactly.
the titles,
And
the labels, and all of those things. We can't go through the processes of forgiveness and understanding and growing. We
Mhm.
can't evolve. We
yeah.
can't ascend. We can't transmute. We don't alchemize. We don't do any of those things without acceptance. It starts that
Yeah.
change and that switch starts
And
with
it's
This
also
acceptance.
quote,
accepting the fact of knowing that what happened wasn't, well, most of the time was
Doesn't
not
define
our,
you.
doesn't define you, and it wasn't our fault.
No, it's
We
not.
can only control what we do. And yes, there are times that some of our trauma is our own doing,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and accepting that as well is part of that resilience and that growth and that change and breaking this
there's
breaking the cycles. But and as much as I love everybody, I know your wife is looking at you like, come on, Miss
Yeah,
Jenlyn,
I have to
it's
go.
time.
Yes.
So um this has been amazing and very, very enlightening. Just what we've covered, and I
Yeah.
know we've got at least another hour and a half that of more info. So, like a few other of the topics within this
Yeah.
series,
I have a part of my story that no one on LinkedIn or YouTube knows that happened to me 4 months after this happened, that I want to share.
and I
Next.
have two quotes
Yeah.
that go with everything we're talking about, but I know Jenlyn has to go, so I just want to put it out there. I wrote them down so I can say them next time, but they're
Yeah.
because I want to give, when I do talk about it, I want to give it the time it deserves to make the connection. I don't just want to,
Yeah.
but these two, what I will say for today, so I don't leave people kind of hanging and giving them a cliffhanger, which isn't a bad thing, but what I will say is these two quotes are part of what helps me, what helped me get over my past traumas, or even what helps me now deal with the effect of the traumas. And you may not see the connection, which is why I want to give it the time, but we have the power to find connection with something within ourselves and find ways that we can put in strategies where we can think about certain things when those things happen. And these two quotes are kind of a way, it's kind of the light that leads you to the doorway out of the trauma. At least part, one
Just
one
go
of
ahead
the,
and say them, Sharon. I mean, really,
okay.
it's just go ahead and
No,
say
I'm
them.
sorry.
Yeah.
So the quotes that I use are, one is by Wayne Gretzky, and it's you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Okay. And the other one is by Henry Ford. And it's, if you believe you can, you will. And if you believe you can't, you won't. And why I see those two as very powerful and meaningful is simply this: when we're in a trauma bond relationship and coming out of it, we really, our confidence is down. So we don't feel like we can take the shots. We feel like we're going to miss. We feel like we're not worthy. So when you can grab on to taking the shot, even though you feel like you're not worthy, you eventually start to feel worthy, and you eventually start to realize you can make it. And if you think you can't, I promise you, you will not get where you want to get, because you keep finding the evidence that tells you you can't. So when you think you can do something, you're more likely to find the evidence that will show you the way that you can. So these are ways that you can start to shift out of the trauma and into the light.
Be like Thomas, the little engine that could. I think I can. I think I can. Because then you're manifesting it. And when you were saying that, Sharon, that honestly is what was going through my head, was the Thomas the Train. I loved that story as a kid,
So, yeah, I think that I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Today I'm a parade rainer. Okay. And we need those little things we need those things. We need those things to be able to lean into, to motivate us when we have intrinsic motivation. When you're suffering from CPTSD or PTSD and or legit OCD and or other mental health diseases, those do not work. And this is why. So I want to be able to say this, because there are so many people out there that get gaslit by this, that they're just not believing hard enough, that they're just not using the laws of the universe enough to manifest, to magnify what it is that they want, right? And so I have to override this with a medical reality. Mental illnesses like major depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, OCD are not fixed by belief alone, right? They're neurochemical, they're neurological, and there are trauma-based conditions that require integrated care, not just the mindset, right? And so
Absolutely. I
know, but I know that you know that. I'm not saying it for
yeah.
you. I'm saying it
No,
for
I
those of
know.
you
I just
out
want to make
there.
it clear to everybody out there that I
Yeah.
was not trying
Yes,
to
I know.
imply that everything is in your mind and you can override everything with a mindset.
Okay.
Anybody who, yeah, that's, go ahead,
So,
Jenlyn. Sorry.
because it invalidates your lived experience of illness. So when you say you just need to believe, it implies that you're not trying hard enough, or that you don't want it badly enough, or that you're suffering as a result of weakness or negativity. It fuels shame, isolation, it internalizes the blame, right? It ignores access to trauma and systemic harm. So there's intergenerational trauma, there's structural oppression, there's lack of diagnoses, there's resources or care, there's nervous system dysregulation. So belief helps, but it's not the whole story. Your healing is not measured by how fast you move, but how gently you return to yourself. And so if you are one of these people, you are seen and you are heard. And yes, also by Sharon, also by Crystal, by all of us. But these are the narratives that it is so important to have these conversations for, to rewrite, because we are the ones that have to rewrite them. We are the ones that have to support one another. We are the ones that have to call each other out. We are the ones that have to say the hard truths. Like, we are the ones that create the systems that it is that we live with and that we function under, and all of those things. And so it's it's all a dismantling of toxic optimism, toxic positivity. Like those are things that I don't tolerate, because they're all BS. They are something that have been pulled outside of their constructs. They have been pulled outside of the space that they're meant to be used in, and they vilify. They're used to vilify our own selves, or, you know, squander our worth and all those things. And so I know that you didn't mean any of those things.
No, I don't mean any of those things.
Yeah.
I believe anybody who knows me, and for those of you that don't, the people that know me can tell you and
Absolutely.
validate that I believe in a holistic approach.
Yep.
I believe in the use of the power of the mind, because our mind is very powerful, and we can rewire.
If it's helping.
Yes, we can but what I was about to say is we can rewire what's going on.
Most people can. Most people can, but if you can't, that's
you can be helped. What I'm saying is you can be. What I'm saying is together. Anybody who knows me knows that I believe in medicine and alternative ways. And for me, and I say this, and other people have another view, and that's fine. But you can marry the two. Like I would not. I'll use myself as an example. I would not be a functioning human being if I didn't swallow at least 10 pills a day. 10 pills a day help keep my body moving. I've had people say, go off your meds. You can do it all through the mind, and through holistic. And I call out bullshit, because I had times where my doctors took me off everything, and all they did was make the problems worse.
Yes. Right.
So it has to be for most people. It has to be a combination.
Yes.
And you are never, I'm going to say this loud and proud and clear. You are never at fault for trauma experiences that have happened to you. All of us have a percentage within, of culpability, but it's never about you. There's somebody else or multiple people involved. And if you're out there experiencing this, please know that you don't have to do it alone. And if you're 20 years out from your trauma or 100 years out from your trauma, it can come back like that because it stays with you. So please,
our life is
reach out.
That's the thing about big trauma or little trauma. And I know we'll talk about that later, but the body doesn't know a difference.
Right.
It's about the chemical response that happens in your body and in your brain, and that's it. So when you couldn't read in second grade when you were called on and you got laughed at and you went home crying, that is just that, right. So this is the area where
I laughed so loud, but you brought me back to second grade. When I was sitting at my desk going, please don't call me. Please don't call me.
I actually had to go into a special group to learn. I love you. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Okay.
Bye, Jen.
Good luck with your doctor's appointment. Let me know about next week as well. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you both so much. Thank you, everyone, for being present.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we can finish talking for a moment before I say my goodbyes and give them a little teaser of what you and I are going to be talking about.
Sure. One of the things that I kind of referenced it a little bit earlier, but there's a lot of trauma bonding that happens around people and their caregivers, whether it's somebody who's disabled or somebody who's a senior. Caregiver trauma bond is a real thing, and caregiver trauma bond, even when it's a family member, is a real thing, and sometimes that could be an even deeper trauma bond. And again, I just want to say that no matter what trauma bond we're dealing with, whether it's, caregiver trauma bond or spousal trauma bond or friendship trauma bond, there is no one formula to handling and overcoming the trauma.
No.
How you handle the trauma or how you overcome the trauma and what techniques are going to work for you is as individual as we are. So
it really is mix and match. I mean, there are certain parts of my trauma that certain coping mechanisms work for,
And
and others that they don't.
that's what I wanted to say
Yeah.
is that, look, I don't believe that if I worked with many therapists and many coaches that said, if you just say positive affirmations, you'll feel better. I don't believe that at
Yeah.
all. I believe that, can it help
Yeah.
sometimes and some people? Yes, but even when it works sometimes, it's not going to work all of the time. And I just really need to say again that by no means was I saying when I said those quotes that if you just live by those quotes,
Yeah.
you're gonna be all healed and
No.
whatever. You're
God,
not.
no.
It's one of the ways that you can
Yeah.
potentially help yourself. It's one of the strategies that you can use, because I know that I had to find ways, and I say ways because it's multiple. I had to find ways and strategies, multiple strategies, to pull myself out of my trauma bonds.
Yeah.
And trust me when I tell you, for those of you that know me might be saying, what do you mean you had trauma bonds? I
Yeah.
had trauma bonds.
Oh, yeah. Um, you're talking about caregivers. I was thinking about when I was in boarding school, when Ollie's story from when he was,
Mhm.
you know, mentors, teachers. There's good bonds with teachers that are mentors, and then there are trauma bonds. You hear
Absolutely.
about it, especially with sports teams and things like
And
that. And
coaches,
hi,
yeah.
Izzy. Good to see you, sweetheart. And Cherry, I love you, and I'm holding you to that phone call. You've been putting me off for too long. Mwah. I love you. Sorry.
So this is definitely a topic that we can talk about. And look, even when we do part two, we could probably make a part 50,000. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons we're here, is because we want to talk about the hard things. And there are different perspectives, and that's okay.
Mhm.
The only thing that I wanted to make very clear is that I don't feel there's one way
No.
to get to an end. I
Yeah.
do believe in combining or marrying processes that, until you
Yeah.
find the formula that works for you.
Yeah. Well, mental health isn't one size fits all, period. Well,
Exactly.
me personally, I don't take any pills. Should I take some for my anxiety? Probably. But
It's
uh,
okay that you, but I want to make it clear
and
that
exactly.
it's okay that you don't. It's your choice.
Yeah.
For me,
Um,
medically, my body wouldn't function, like
right.
physically function without the
Oh,
medication.
exactly.
But I'm just saying, but there's such a stigma around mental health and
Yes,
taking
and mental
medication
health.
and taking
Absolutely.
medication and needing, and I, any of my clients who are on medication will tell you that I am a proponent of medication. They'll say to me as a coach, do you, I want to get off my meds, what do you think? And I say, you want to get off, you can work towards getting off with your parents, because most of them are minors when I'm
Yeah.
going having this conversation. But I also encourage them that if the medication is making a difference, then if it ain't broke,
Stick
don't
with
fix it.
that.
It's not gonna, but a lot
Yeah.
of times people say the medication, they think they're taking this medication and it's gonna just make everything go away, and it doesn't. So that's why I'm saying there's multiple layers for a lot of people of things you need in order to be able to, become, more effective with overcoming the trauma, or, managing. I don't even want to say overcoming, managing the trauma. So thanks,
Yeah.
Chris.
Well, and that's just it. I'm still trying to figure it out myself,
Mhm,
with the managing of the trauma.
mhm,
And it does show up physically,
mhm,
you know, when my anxiety and everything are like really amped up.
mhm,
You can verify this. I mean, because you've heard me complain. My sciatica, my psychotic nerve goes is 1,000 times worse, the pain. And I
yep,
get like with me, it manifests physically like right in the center of my back, besides
mhm,
like my psychotic nerve. You know, it literally feels like there's somebody holding a block of ice to the center, like right in between my shoulder blades, you
mhm.
know, and that's what happened, it physically manifests that way. And everybody knows that I hum. My body just has started just doing that now. Like
And
I've got
for you, it's an almost
that's
an automatic thing because it's a release. It's a way that your body has
mhm,
learned to
mhm,
release your anxiety, and it when you become aware that you're humming, it also makes you aware
mhm.
that your anxiety is at a level that needs to be paid attention to and managed.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think this
So
has been a great conversation, and I want to thank everybody who has joined
yeah.
us. Um,
Absolutely.
Sure.
I truly appreciate everybody and that has come and joined us live now, and for everybody that is in team that's team replay. We are doing, like I said, a part two and continuing the trauma bond discussion within
Can I add something to that, Crystal?
sure.
I would like,
Mhm.
if it's okay with you, Crystal, I'd like to offer if
Mhm.
people have questions that they want to ask, maybe either, if they're comfortable putting their question in the comments, put the
I
question in the
I
comments
was
underneath
getting
it.
there. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I'll let you get there
No,
then.
no worries. What I was gonna say is we are doing a part two, so please, if you have questions or need to reach out, um, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, to Sharon, to Jenlyn, um, on YouTube, on you guys watching on YouTube. I will put both Sharon's YouTube channel and Jenlyn's in the description, so that you guys could, number one, hopefully, do that little thing called, subscribing, so we can grow Sharon and Jenlyn's channel because we love each other, but also because what I, can't or don't know, both of them can fill in dots. We all kind of fit together and
Well, everybody
have
can fill in
different,
other
yeah,
people's dots. We don't. There's
hmm
no human being that knows
yeah,
everything. So,
exactly. God, I would not want to meet that
and
person.
I wouldn't want to meet that person even if they weren't, because my brain would explode.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it's like, I know this is why the three of us work well together. Um, And Izzy, please reach out if you need to talk, honey. Sending you threes.
Yeah.
We love you. Yeah. For those of you that are listening on LinkedIn, Izzy Pop is a very dear friend of mine. She actually did my banner that I have on both my LinkedIn and my YouTube channel. She's an amazing graphic artist that and such. So, but it's just these conversations are so important. And I mean, Sharon, I go to Sharon all the time when I'm stressed. She comes to me, and I mean, we help, we celebrate each other's wins. We help each other, feed off of each other. She's the one of the very few people that I trust to help me edit when it comes to the anthology and with my writing, because we just get each other, and when you find that person that can help you, like Sharon helps me, like Jenlyn helps me, like we help each other,
Mhm.
that form of bond is the exact opposite of trauma bond. Yes, you are bonding over shared
But
traumas in a
you're
sense,
bonding over
over
eh,
healthy ways of
healthy ways.
healing,
So
and
yeah,
not, you know
yeah.
so I'm hungry. I'm pretty
I
sure
was gonna say
you,
I have to go because I have to
yes.
head to another
Mhm.
meeting in a few minutes. But
But
I do want to say thank you for having me today, Crystal.
always, you know that.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Jen Lynn, for being part of this as well and sharing your experiences. And thank
Mhm.
you to everybody who's watching live on both LinkedIn and YouTube. And thank you to
Yes.
Team Replay. And
Mhm.
if you're not if you're not comfortable reaching out to anybody in particular, I just want to go ahead and mention that in England and in the US, you can call 988 for mental health support, confidential mental health support. It's a 24-hour hotline.
Mhm.
And in Canada, I believe the number is 999. I've heard Aaron Gibson say it many times now.
Mhm.
So Just do, you can reach out to any of us, but you can also have those
Yeah.
hotline numbers. And I always recommend that people keep those hotline numbers, on the emergency list of numbers where you have the fire department and all
Mhm.
that stuff. Just
Yeah.
put that on there.
I I actually used to have that list, but I don't have it digitally. I need to actually add that into my ending live. Thank you for reminding me. Hey, Izzy, I got a job for you. I'll pay you if you want to do my exit video. I love you. She does amazing work. I love watching her do it. Um, anyway,
Very cool. But I will see you.
I love you.
Yeah.
Call me later. Um, I will talk to you soon, and I'm gonna kick you off stage because I got a couple of closing stuff. Love you.
Love you too. Thanks again.
Bye. All right, guys. So, uh, um, that was part one of the um, first responders and trauma bonds. And trust me when I say what today was just the tip of the iceberg. Jenlyn and I have a lot of stuff to go into on that. You all know me well enough to know that my ADHD brain and schedules don't work with me. So that's why the series isn't going in any kind of an order like it should. But I have the opposite of OCD anyway. But I will, now that I'm figuring out my work schedule and everything since I got the paying job. Um, I will be, focusing once again on getting a schedule for this trauma bond series because so many of you have made so many great comments and are learning and everything. And that's what we want to do. We want you guys to know that you aren't alone if you are going through something like that, to please reach out, you know, and that you are heard and seen and loved. So thank everybody for being here with me, Jenlyn and Sharon, this morning. And on Team Replay, I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need to, or just if you want to say hi. Um, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And you are loved. And I will see you again soon. Mwah. Bye, guys.